I had some back to Godheads. I gave her a couple of back to Godheads. And as soon as she opened the cover, she started crying, tears pouring out of her eyes. She was like living when Prabhupada was downstairs. And she said he would go and he would leave and he'd come back. And you never know when he was coming or going, but he was working all night long. Then he'd go to the printer and he'd get his job done and then he'd just disappear. And now he told me that early that it was going to be a movement that would just take over the world. And I told her, well, that's happened already. She started crying and practically rolling on the floor. He said he was going to do it, and he did it. He was such a gentleman. It was like such an understanding that they had between the two of them that he would do this in the future. But that time there was nothing, just an idea in Prabhupada's divine personality. There's another story which is quite famous now. I've told it a few times, but there's one devotee in Los Angeles. This is told me by Radhikun, who knew the devotee. He didn't want to be named because he wasn't an outstanding devotee, or he was off the record a little bit. In any case, he's looking for the keyhole into Prabhupada's room. So he sees Prabhupada golden, silvery light, his whole body crystalline, his eyes like diamonds, and a light shedding on Prabhupada that came from nowhere. So it was like an apparition of divinity that he couldn't understand. So he walked away from it. And he came back and looked again. This time he saw Prabhupada rolling on the floor by himself and laughing. So he didn't want to bother that either. So he backed off and approached Prabhupada later because he was checking to see if Prabhupada wanted anything. And so he asked Prabhupada, what were you doing rolling on the floor laughing? So I'm sorry, I didn't want to disturb anybody, but I was wrestling with Balaram. Now Prabhupada was wrestling with Balaram. And in Jansing with Acharya Prabhakar, he was coming back from Delhi. He saw Prabhupada bouncing around in the room. There was no understanding what was going on, but he was suddenly crying, tears pouring out of his eyes. He's banging off the walls, playing the mridanga, chanting. He had a big garland of kadamba flowers. He tells a story like this, that he didn't understand what was going on. And so next morning, Prabhupada wouldn't respond to his question. So then next morning, he talked to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada was in a more natural state. He says, well, again, I don't really want to talk about it too much, but I got a garland. This garland came from Krishna. I went to grab his feet, and he disappeared, and I couldn't stop it. I mean, I just searching for Prabhupada and separation, searching for Krishna and separation. And so Prabhupada had such divinity that another example that he was not going to Bhuvaneshwar for some reason. Then Lord Shiva appeared to Prabhupada and said, why don't you come and visit me in Bhuvaneshwar? So that's the origination of Srimad Bhagavatam. In any case, Prabhupada says, okay. So because on the plea of Lord Shiva, Prabhupada went to Bhuvaneshwar. Then there was a debate going on whether Prabhupada was a cowherd boy or a cowherd girl. And so Gaur Govind was listening to a debate going on with the Bhagavad and some of his friends. And so they said, the final conclusion was Prabhupada, because of Krishna Balaram temple, Prabhupada's a cowherd boy. Gaur Govind says, no, he's a Manjari. And so he must have heard it from Prabhupada directly. So Prabhupada could take on many different forms, we don't know. Nobody really knows Prabhupada's true identity. But he did say to Bhavananda, if I told you who I really am, you wouldn't believe it anyway. And then he said, but my divine form, spiritual form is golden. I'm moving around here a little bit on these ideas. Now this is a list of stories that I don't think anybody's ever heard before. There are 3 miracles in 3 minutes that happened in San Diego, I think. Again, told by Radhakund Das. Prabhupada was approaching a chair which had a picture of his Guru Maharaj, Srila Bhaktisidhanta, on the chair. It was done nicely with a cloth underneath. And so Prabhupada was checking to make sure it was done nicely. Then he started doing the Guru Puja to his spiritual master. So he was doing the whole thing. And all of a sudden he realized that there was no bowl for the water. So he's doing the artik and he told Rupanuga, a bowl. I need a bowl. Bowl! Bowl! Haribo! 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 The whole place went crazy and started chanting Haribo. So it didn't, Prabhupada just looked at him and, what have I got to work with? Little antidotes. Tears of joy. Prabhupada is on the plane, and some of the servants of Ananta Shanti is another story. But Shruti Kirti is telling the story that Prabhupada pinned a picture of a drawing made by a little girl on the seat in front of him. He was looking at that drawing of Krishna and Radharani, and he was crying. Tears were coming out of his eyes just by the vision of seeing this little girl's impression of what Radha and Krishna looked like. Then another story, Ananta Shanti. He came to Vrindavan years ago, and I told him, I said, listen, Prabhu, you got to register with the FRO. You got to be here only, you got 14 days or something before you got to be registered with the FRO. He didn't take it in any serious light, so they found out he was here illegal. He went over his stay, and so pretty soon he was in jail in Mathura. When I found out, I went directly to Mathura, got him out of jail. I told the warden that you got to understand how important this guy is, because he's started the whole movement in Russia. So we let him out in a car coming back. He says, I've been in jail in Russia and so many times. I get to Vrindavan, I get put in jail in Mathura. Now, where's the hope? And so then we're walking over by the Goshala in the area where the samadhis are. Little did I know his samadhi was next, so he's buried, his ashes are there. And then when the whole thing with Professor Katowski happened in Moscow, we don't know the other part of the story, is that when they the whole party left, it wasn't a big party, it was just a couple of devotees with Prabhupada. And so they left and they walked out the door, and as soon as they walked out, telephone call from the KGB. Who are you talking to and what is this all about? So they were cued in to what was going on already. So, and then Ananta Shanti, of course, is famous now for spreading it all over Russia. Guru Kripa tells another story, that there's a magic dab. This is in Visakhapatnam. And they're waiting for a train to come back to Delhi or Calcutta, I don't remember. But in any case, they're waiting, and Shyama-Sundar climbed and got a coconut, prepared a coconut and gave it to Prabhupada. Prabhupada took a drink out of it and kept drinking and drinking. He passed it on to Shyama-Sundar. He drank with it. He kept drinking with it, and he gave it to Guru Das. No, I gave it to Guru. Who was the next? Anyway, it was a whole series of devotees that got that dab. Guru Kripa was next. Then he passed it on. He said, give it to the kirtan party. So at least 15 people drank from that little dab. Never emptied, like Draupadi's pot. And Prabhupada just smiled and laughed and went out to some rickshaw walla. He's probably still drinking. I'm just trying to give an impression of what I think are some of the most important things that another good one. Prabhupada has his room in Radha Damodar. He's sitting in the room, and outside the room is a monkey that would come almost all the time. And Jamuna would feed the monkey something, and the monkey would go on his way. Otherwise, the monkey wouldn't leave. So this time, Prabhupada's talking to the monkey through the window. Monkey's outside listening to Prabhupada. And Prabhupada's talking in monkey talk, blah, 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 blah. And the monkey understood. So the monkey was puzzled. Who is this that can speak in monkey talk? In any case, Jamuna was listening outside the door. And so she asked Prabhupada later, Srila Prabhupada, it's amazing, you can talk to monkeys. What did he want? He says, well, I told him you were a Goswami in your last life. In this life, you're a monkey, but don't worry. This life, next life, you go back home, back to Godhead. So go, ciao. And so the monkey left and didn't take his prasadam. So I'm giving you a picture of Prabhupada from another viewpoint that nobody's never heard these stories before. There's couple famous more. Prabhupada was in London, I think it was Conway Hall. They hired this big hall and nobody came. And so they complained and they were sorry, we apologized that we advertised it but nobody showed up. So what do you mean nobody showed up? Narada Muni was here. You didn't see him sitting in the front row. He had a bowler hat on, he had an umbrella, and he dressed in the typical British outfit, suit and tie, black suit, white with black tie. So Narada Muni comes. And okay, there's another funny one. I believe, I've never been told, I've never been seen or heard before. Anyway, I'll tell you why. Okay, there's this famous moonshot, Neil Armstrong touches the moon. Prabhupada looked at it on TV, he was Dhananjay was massaging Prabhupada at that time. And so Prabhupada says, they're not on the moon, where's the houses, where's the parks, and where's everything? It's not just dust. So they're not on the moon, they're somewhere else, maybe the Arizona desert. Anyway, I find out later that Stanley Kubrick filmed this whole production in a studio in London. That whole presentation about the landing on the moon was a concoction by Stanley Kubrick. And his wife had videos of some of the pieces of the movement of the movie. And after the the CIA told him if you talk about it even a little bit, you're finished. So he died soon after that by unforeseen, who knows what happened. But, so there's this film clip. As soon as Armstrong touches the ground, supposedly on the moon, a crane fell in the background and smash came down right behind Armstrong. Okay, reshoot. So it was just a staged thing, and it was done so well. Everybody who saw it believed it. How many saw that Armstrong's landing? Anyway, it was such a dramatic, he was so good. If you've seen some of his other films, they're really good, Clockwork Orange and other movies that he made. Really an expert, artistic, creative person.
When they did the moon landing, I saw that it showed the simulation.
Yeah.
And then they switched from the simulation to the real thing, but the real thing looked just like the simulation.
The real thing was a simulation anyway. Anyway, they never got close.
Yeah.
And even the scientists said there was no possibility with the advancement of science at that time, they couldn't do it even now. What to speak, and the moon is, Prabhupada kept saying, the moon is higher than the sun. But he was saying that the moon is further than the sun. So they got to go by the sun and double that to get to the moon. So the moon is pretty big.
It's in the 8th canto where Prabhupada says that. He says that it's not possible in 4 days to get to the moon.
Yeah.
The 8th canto, somewhere like chapter 9, somewhere around there.
It'll take a long time to get to the moon, even if they tried it now.
You can get to Arizona in 4 days.
Yeah, go to Arizona, it'll be faster. Aditya told me a story that Prabhupada in a class in Pittsburgh, what year was that? Anyway, 1971, Pittsburgh. So Prabhupada's about to give the class, and he says, I don't want anybody taking notes unless you can take down everything I say without any errors. So Aditya perked up. You know Aditya's a sweet little lady, with glasses, really petite and very humble. Worked in Bombay for years. But as soon as she heard that, she remembered that, I got my shorthand book and I got my notepad and pencil. So she gets up, because she couldn't hear very well from where she was sitting and away in the back. She walks all the way through the whole crowd in Pittsburgh Temple and sits right down. There's a little spot right next to Prabhupada's Vyasa-san with sannyasis all around her. There's this little girl sitting there in the midst of all these sannyasis, and she started writing in shorthand. And if you know what shorthand looks like, it looks like Arabic. And so a sannyasi behind, she's writing in Arabic. And Prabhupada would look at her once in a while and wait until she finished writing and continue speaking. He kept checking to see if she was doing it right. And so all he could see was all this Arabic writing going on in her book. Then Prabhupada just ended the talk without saying another word, walked off, and she got everything, except the Sanskrit. It's too hard to translate. So all glory to Aditya. What a wonderful person. And Prabhupada came to the Fate Studios. I'll tell some of the personal stories. And Prabhupada came in, and this happened to a number of devotees. I was lamenting, I'm always in the background, I never get a chance to get up close. And suddenly the whole thing shifted and it opened up, and all of a sudden Prabhupada's face to face. And he looked into my eyes and I looked back, and oh my God, wow. Just a complete cleanse, just a complete spiritual, thorough cut through on everything that I didn't even remember, but it was flashing through my brain, all this stuff going away. So it happened to many devotees, I found out later. So that Prabhupada had the ability to just cut through all the Maya and just hit you right to the core of the heart and make you Krishna conscious. And so you can't top that one. That was, never forget it. I mean, it was such a heavy movement, heavy moment. Then he goes to the first diorama, and he just looked at it for a couple of minutes and then went on to where the junk was piled outside in the courtyard. It was fenced off, and in the courtyard was all this junk piled up, about 20 foot high. I says, Bhardaraj said, he's going to see this. You can't get away with this. He said, no, he won't see. We'll keep the door locked. The Prabhupada goes right to the door. He says, open the door. He was going to deny Prabhupada's entrance to anything. So he opened the door, and there it was. And he points right at it and says, he'll take care of this and paint that back wall. Then he went to the tool room. I tell this from my own experience because I was the one that took care of the tools. I was a carpenter before, an architect. And so Prabhupada spent all this time in the tool room, checking out every tool. There was pictures of the tools on a board with lines around it. So when a tool was missing, you knew who had it. And so then he went to the first, there was a Murti of Prabhupada at a younger version, which is what he was like at Radha Damodar, so in the beginning of his preaching. And so he looked at it, and all of a sudden it had moved up. Lochan did the work, and he flipped the switch, and there was a motor underneath the table with a rod into the head, and the head went up. And Prabhupada cracked up, he laughed. I thought it was so funny, a whole version of himself in this kind of new medium. Then he came to the dioramas of the change in body display. So I had made a small one. It was like a model study from Bhardaraj's early picture in Back to Godhead. And there was a big one underway. So Bhardaraj asked Srila Prabhupada, would you like this for your room? Innocent, he just asked. Prabhupada looked at him and summed up the philosophy in 2 words. My room? He didn't need to know he's not his body, of course, and what's going to be a diorama like that in his room for? At one time in Calcutta Temple, Pishima is sitting right by Prabhupada's side, and Prabhupada's going on about Pishima in English, so she didn't understand any of this thing. So Pishima was laughing along with Prabhupada, and the whole room was full of people laughing. And the Prabhupada kept saying that she keeps telling me she's not eating, doesn't eat anything, but she keeps getting fat. And she kept going on and on with this. Prabhupada kept making fun of her and just cracking everybody up in the room, because Pishima was laughing and just carrying on, not understanding what was going on. And so he kept saying, is there anybody who doesn't eat and still get fat? And the way Prabhupada said it, it just created such a laughter, and the people were cracking up in any way that she didn't even know what happened. Little Saraswati, Shamasunda's little daughter, had access to Prabhupada's room day and night, anytime she wanted. She was about the only person that could get in and out without anybody questioning her. And Prabhupada said, you know, Saraswati, the garbage trucks in New York? I don't think she knew what that meant. But in New York, there's these big trucks, and they got a big mouth in the back. And it opens way up. And it comes down and closes. Your mouth is just like a garbage truck in New York. You're always eating, you're always taking something in your mouth. And she came in to get something more. She was eating when she came in and eating when she went out. But his play with the girls and the kids were just so sweet and so innocent. There was one little boy, Kishore Das's little boy was Premananda, who was 6 or 7 years old at that time. But he got dressed up as a sannyasi and had a little danda and walked into Prabhupada's room. Prabhupada looked at him and said, Maharaj, come sit, beta beta. And so he sat down right in front of Prabhupada and looked at the glubjamins. And so Prabhupada gave one for each hand. He complimented him in his nice uniform. So he went out that day and ate his glubjamins. The next morning he came dressed again. But this time he was using his danda to push away these cowherd boys. And Prabhupada was standing right behind him. He says, whose son is this? Kishore had to look and say, it was my son. And so he said, don't dress them like this again. They're not something you ridicule. So Kishore was amazed by the different mood that could change instantly. Prabhupada was very pleased and happy to see him dressed like that. Next day, not to see it ridiculed. There's a devotee, Dr. Misra, who saw some of the work that I've been doing. I'll show you in a minute, but Dr. Misra is still preaching if he's still alive. And he's got disciples that are still believing in what he's talking about. Did I mention the 3 miracles in 3 minutes? Anyway, I didn't finish the story, I think. No, I did, about Haribo, Haribo, Haribo. So when Prabhupada was walking through the dioramas in the Fate studio we had all these angels stuck to the walls above everything we were working on. They're Gandharvas, they had big wings and they were pretending to be flying. So, at any rate, Prabhupada said, what are they? And Bhagavad said, they're Gandharvas. Gandharvas don't have any wings. So shut down that whole thing. Bingo, no good. Close down the whole thing. Okay, there was one devotee, I don't remember the girl's name, a senior devotee lady. Oh, well, let me tell that story first. I'm almost to the end of this. And so she was a scholar of ancient Greek philosophy, and she was a student of Socrates. and she wanted to know more about how could Socrates understand so much about Vedic knowledge. So apparently, somehow or other, the Prabhupada claimed that the Romans got it from the Greeks, and the Greeks got it from the Vedas. So Socrates was tuned in somewhere along the line. So who's the first devotee? Who's the first devotee? Nobody knows. Socrates. And Prabhupada said that he was the first devotee because he knew the Vedic conclusion. He's not his body. You can try to kill me, but try to catch me first. But then, okay, I'll wrap up with the final moments of Srila Prabhupada. Anybody else is giving class today is here? Nobody came. Satyaraj, is he here? Oh, there he is. Okay, I'm almost finished. And so the final moments. Now, if Narada Muni can take a dress like a Britisher, and the kirtan parties in L.A., there was one kirtan party that went wild, right through the roof. All of a sudden, the whole roof opened up and we're in the spiritual world. And everybody in the room at that time just could feel the energy going wild, crazy. Opened up the whole idea of what kirtan's all about. And then later, Prabhupada said, the reason why it was so ecstatic is because guess who came? Narada Muni, Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, even Indra came. And so if they could come for a kirtan, and they were all laughing. And why were they laughing? Because there was all the malechas dancing and chanting and relishing the holy name. They thought that was the funniest thing they'd ever seen. And then, so at the last moments, just before Prabhupada left, my wife and I were in the room. We got in there about 7 o'clock. And 15 minutes later, the world completely stopped still. And so the ramifications hit the world all around real hard. And I could feel the energy above our heads. Maybe you felt it. But it was a packed, solid packed room. But above our heads was even more packed. It was just like this heavy energy coming down from the top of our heads. And so if they came to a kirtan, then certainly, I presume, of course I didn't see it, but the kirtan party inspired to bring in all these great souls, these demigods who are here to witness this great event that took place when Prabhupada left his body. So Prabhupada preached right to the very end in the last words, Hare Krishna. And he left. And our lives changed. Then there's a story after he left. There's one devotee, first French devotee, sannyas, Pitaputra. And he was contacted AIDS. He left the movement and he got really sick, had AIDS, and he about to die. He's unconscious for days. So suddenly he gets up, he sits up in the bed, and the doctors are waiting for him to pass away. So Prabhupada, you come. And he bowed, and he went down and died. So Prabhupada's there for all of us at the last moment when we think it's a useless life sometimes. We're just doing the same thing over and over again, but ultimately it's accumulative. That the more we chant and the more we hang on to the philosophy, the stronger we are, and ultimately the closer we are going back to Godhead. You want to take over? Roll on. Okay, any questions first? Or should I give there's a question. I got a couple more. So we're putting in the first museum in Los Angeles, and it went into the old temple room, which is a small space. I mean, big, but not as big as this room. And so we're dividing that room up into little segments and putting in dioramas. I was sitting in one of the boxes. I rounded off all the corners so you could have perpetual perspective into the mural that you paint into like a half an eggshell. Corners stop that ability, but if you round off the walls, then you can paint in any kind of image, and it looks like it goes way into the background, very full 3-dimension. So that's a secret of how to do a diorama mural. And in Mayapur, I'll repeat, let me finish that story. So I'm sitting with Karandar inside the box, and their walls are covered with elephants and horses coming out of the walls. There's really detailed soldiers, and the armies are facing each other. And above the heads of everybody is vultures circling around on the top, getting ready for the big fight. And I said, Bhardraj, listen, we got to try that chariot and Krishna Arjuna before we put the final touches on the diorama. He said, no, go ahead. It'll be okay. So he put in a chariot with Krishna Arjuna. It covered up everything. So this is the fun exchange between devotees. They used to burn each other. And so the dioramas were a creative experience. Probably one diorama coming out every day, but we couldn't manage more than a few dioramas. And we had to do a subterfuge. What we did, because Bhardraj would sometimes, if you know, how many know Bhardraj? Anyway, he was one of the top artists in our ISKCON society. He came early, he was from Russia, and his work is in the early paintings in all the books. Great artist, no doubt. But he had an unlimited scope for perfection. What he considered perfection, it couldn't be reached. So he kept changing things, and the guy sitting next to me making a big sculpture in clay, Bhardraj would come along and just smash it and start over again. Because that's how he learned here in Mayapur. They were the first guys that Prabhupada picked out to make dolls. And Prabhupada was called in the artist. He says, I want somebody to go to India and learn how to make dolls. So what's a doll? I asked. So Prabhupada took some clay and rolled out a head in just a round ball, and rolled out a couple long pieces of clay, and stuck it all together, made a stick figure, just with a head with long and then legs. That's a doll. But I want you to go to Mayapur and learn how to do it from the experts. So they got to Mayapur, and they had to make bananas, make a real looking banana, a real looking orange, an apple, before they could mature on to bigger things like a figure. So it was make and break. Prabhupada would come and encourage them by doing the breaking system. And so because of that, he brought that to LA, and this guy who was working with me next to me, he kept making it. He's doing the very best he could because he was an alcoholic before, and he still had the shivers. So he was trying his very best, and Bhardraj would come and smash it so many times. But finally Bhardraj was approaching, so he took his own head and he smashed it himself. So the moral of the story is, don't drink, first off. Secondly, if you're going to learn diorama making, take your time and patience and be steady and perseverance. Because in Mayapur, that's what I want to get to, that the TLVP is still in progress, and it'll be there for another at least 10 more years. They only have it updated on it, but the outside is maybe 85% at best finished. The big dome is still being worked on. 2 smaller domes are about finished. And the inside is basically untouched. So to go from this point in time to a finished status, it's going to take 10 years anyway. And so, whether we know it or not, it's going to require hundreds of artists working around the clock to get this thing in order. There's 3 layers around the rim of the dome. The dome, of course, is going to be, it's massive dome, the biggest dome in the world. They haven't yet engineered how to hold that chandelier in place. So the Yavis and Sariputta and many others thought the same thing. Do it holograms. Holograms are now advanced enough, with laser projection holograms, you can do it by imagery. and then there's no problem, and that dome stays intact. Because when you turn off the machine, ultimately you got that massive, huge impression of that dome. Is incredible. So in any case, they're still trying to figure out how to attach it and suspend a ton of material over the heads of everybody and obscure the dome. So there's an argument going on between the domers and the chandeliers and the imageries of laser projection. In any case, it's still going on. So who wins, I don't know, but the Prabhupada wanted a chandelier, so it can be done in both ways. The Prabhupada was here to say, yes, do it with laser projection. You got the technology, now do it. You can keep increasing the technology, because when scientists come and they look at it, they're going to criticize it because there it is. You can't get rid of it. But with now you see it, now you don't. With laser projection, you got it by a strong hold, because you can show it, talk about it, explain it, and some of the explanation will go around the ring of the dome. And then there'll be Brihad Bhagavatamrita, which I'm still working on. The book comes out another couple months. All the floor, the layout of the floor plan, it's like not in meters, it's in kilometers. Those 3 rims around the 3-level lower, middle, and upper planetary systems is going to take so much work. Nobody has even any conception how much work is still lying ahead. It hasn't even been thought about still. So it's dragging on, and because of money and politics, I don't know what the cause is. But ultimately, when the time comes down to it, we're going to need an input of artists from all over the world to come to Mayapur and work on it. So I'm just giving a forerunner of what may happen in the very soon, in the near future, that we're going to need artists from everywhere. Not just artists, but model makers, costume designers. Just like we had in Fate, we had just about everything: jewelry makers, helmet makers, palace scenery, murals, you name it. It's going to incorporate everything. Laser projection, holograms, be incorporated within the jurisdiction of the presentation for the 3 rims, the 3 lower, middle, and upper planetary systems. So I'm finished. So Satyanarayan is ready with he's got some stories that he's never been told before. So I'm finished. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.